But I wanted to thank everybody for coming down. One of the things that is so important through a process like this is that we have public engagement. It's so amazing to live in a town where people care so much about what's going on in the town, where they're willing to come in, step up, and be a part of the, I'm just going to call it the change, but part of the lack of change and part of making sure that our lives don't change dramatically. We've got one of my neighbors called it the what do you call it? The Death Star. The Death Star is coming, he said, for many years, and the Death Star is here. That is San Antonio's what it was. We have developers that are on top of us. We're surrounded by developments that are getting ready to happen. We're trying to minimize the impact of that. So we're going through this process. So I wanted to talk to you really quickly. I'm going to, and held it about 3 minutes by my trusty protectors. So I'm going to talk about a little bit. So this is not what this process is these are updates, they're not rewrites. We're looking at the master plan, the long-term vision plans. We had one in 2001, 2011, 2013, 2016. The state requires us to do it about every 5 years. We're behind on it right now, but it's just an update to the ones that we've already done. And so with that master plan, it is the consolidation and de-conflicting of our codes and ordinances. So right now, most of the ordinances are done through the CZO, but there are some that are outside of the CZO. So it's bringing everything back into it. I think we made a mistake. We called it something different. Comprehensive zoning ordinances versus universal development ordinance. They're, if you look at the comprehensive and universal or unified, they're basically the same thing. So we are combining these into one consistent document, so there's no confusion. And really the goal here is to ensure clarity for everybody who wants to build here. Whether it's somebody building their forever home for themselves and their family, or somebody wants to do something to improve or protect, or whether it's external developers that want to capitalize on a growing area, we want to make sure that it's entirely clear what's acceptable and what's not. That is currently mostly in our codes, but there's some things that are missing, so we will fill in the gaps through this process. So fast forward here. So this is not about, I guess, let's talk about what this isn't and what it isn't. We are not trying to change the way that we live here. I think that Castroville has persisted on so well because there are so many people that care so much about it that I think that everybody's very resistant to change. I don't think that's a bad thing. But what's happening outside on our doorstep, if you think about it, we just went through a process where something that was just across the street impacted our lives, and we fought to protect that. Some people have told me, just protect what's inside of Castroville and let everything else go. But that's kind of across the street, and everything that happens out there impacts every single one of us. And so our codes right now will produce what has been produced before. The codes that we have most of them were modeled after San Antonio, after bigger cities. And so what we'll get is San Antonio and bigger cities on our doorstep. And so what this process is really looking at what do we have. We're not trying to change it, we're trying to replicate it or honor more to the point. So I'm going to let Matt go into this. Now, this process started, it was a little over a year ago. We were looking at doing our updates, and I realized that we had a city planner that came in, and he said, what do you want? What do you want us to change? And we're like, we don't know. We're not city designers. We don't know how to do this stuff. And so we went through a process of educating ourselves and looking for a company that can do this. So Simple City has done, we had a bunch of people that applied to this, great companies that had lots of experience in working in bigger cities. The only one that we found that does small town Texas. They've done Bandera, Bastrop, Taylor, Hutto,
San Marcos.
Done some in San Marcos and in Austin, so they're a little bit bigger as well with some of those. Their primary concentration has been in these small historic towns. And so this was very important. Somebody would take exactly what they had. And if you want to see what they've done in those other towns, also the product of their work is on those websites. You can take a look at this. So we chose Simple City to help us through this process. And we appreciate everything that they're doing to this. This is the first step. Matt's going to explain the rest of the process. He's going to explain about what's happening tonight. I'm going to go sit down before Priscilla and thank you very much for showing up.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. As the Mayor said, my name is Matt Lewis. I'm at the Simple City Design, and I'm going to just elaborate a little bit. The process they went through and they put us through was the most rigorous process we've ever been. And we too select and interview the cities that we want to work with because we believe that there's certain ingredients that cities have that are necessary. One is a small block grid, historic fabric, the ability to have access to nature. And so y'all have all these wonderful ingredients, and you're in this rapid growth movement. I mean, growth is about to be showing up. And so this is an important journey that you all are going on. So the first thing that we do when we get to a town is we study the physical and numerical values that make up that town. We call it the DNA of your town. And the DNA of your town is what you feel every day. It's the spaces that you experience. It's how far the buildings are from the street. It's the dimensions of your blocks, your 330 foot by 330 foot blocks. It's the lots within those blocks. It's how wide the turn radiuses are, what the street widths are, how wide the sidewalks are, where the street trees go, how the pedestrian scale lighting is laid out, how the Highway 90 cuts through the town. All of these elements that are the fabric of your town is what we study. And we did an analysis report that is online, and it'll also be posted on this website at the bottom of this, that you can go and read about our findings. But what we're going to go through tonight is validating those findings and say, you know, what did we get right? What did we get wrong? What did we miss? This is the best way to start this journey. We look at your topography. We study the area around the city. And so we'll go in through those elements as we go forward today. But I invite you all to go have a look at the DNA analysis. And again, this is going to be the foundation of this project going forward, if this is what the community feels that we are validating going forward. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. This is critical. Cities have the ability and capability of providing something for everyone only because and only when they're created by everyone. We need all of you all showing up. We need the young generation in this room, the people that are going to be inheriting the decisions that you all make today. And that's really important for going forward, for the success of this town going forward. Out of this huge earth, we magically arrived in Castroville, Texas. We're here, and it's our responsibility to take ownership of the place that we have, the place that is going to be handed off to this next generation. What does it look like? How does it feel? How does it function for the next generation? This town was laid out with horse and buggies doing U-turns in the street. The town was measured by Varus, which is a wagon wheel turn, right? Now we've got autonomous vehicles driving around, and the fabric of the town has been intact for hundreds of years, and it still facilitates the commerce, the livability, the desires of the community in the exact same configuration it was done when Henry Castro showed up and laid out this foundation. And one of the reasons we think that that is the case is because of your small, flexible blocks. When Castroville was building, it built incrementally. As the town showed up and people showed up, you would add a lot, add a block, build a street, build a water line, build a wastewater line, build some electric lines, right? It was incremental in its growth patterns. The growth that you're seeing today has never been happening in human history. We are doing, 12,000 acre developments, and it is the largest, fastest way we've ever been developing in human history. And we've got to do it to keep up with the growth. But it doesn't mean that it has to happen in a context of what you're getting. It does not have to look like San Antonio, and it doesn't look like Dallas. It can be Castroville, and you have the ability to write the rules to make and keep it as Castroville. Furthermore, we're in Texas, and Texas is its own space, its own place, and it has its own rules. We like property rights. We like, people to stay off our property, be able to do what you want on your property, right? And so when we write our rules, we try and keep them as high level as possible, deregulate, remove a lot of the red tape, make this stuff possible. And so instead of coding the whole lot, maybe you only need to write rules for how the public streets interface with the buildings, and everything else that happens in the backyard stays in the backyard. I don't know. That is a part of this journey that we'll go through these iterations. This plan is so organized. This did not happen by accident. This was very well designed. It was intentional. They came here, they laid out your street networks. They laid out a series of blocks. They laid out a lot pattern. They determined where the parks were going to go. They built it in the arms of the Medina River, surrounding this beautiful place. This was designed. What's going on right now with development is they're doing the lowest common denominator whatever the highest lot yield will yield is what gets built. That was not the premise of the way that they built back then. And these small blocks have forever been flexible and have changed over time in what they look like. And furthermore, the community over these generations achieved this plan. This is an aerial photo looking down on the plan set, and you can see the two plans overlay perfectly as imagined, vision, and it became so important to you all that you show up and you fight to protect it, and it's this type of fabric that it takes to get this right. Who thinks that you all should have a say of how Castroville builds out around this area, not just the poor? Who doesn't think you should have a say? All right, so everyone kind of feels like y'all should have a say in this. I too think you should have a say, and the state law provides you the ability to have a say. The state law changes every 2 years, right? And so we've got to constantly map out new legislative processes as the state legislatures do that. This is what your town looks like in its totality with its city limits. You have over here your airport district, the airport's over here, and you annex over here. And you can see your core town right here. And then what you have here are these additions. They used to not be called subdivisions. They used to be called neighborhood additions as most cities grew. And basically what would happen is, even as this plan got exercised, they were additions to the grid. They were additions to the town. They were not subdivisions, isolated pockets off to the side with loops and lollipops and dead-end streets. That was a math equation that developers figured out how to make the most money. And that's why you get those dead-end streets and the loops and lollipops. And that gets the highest lot yield for the value of the home. But it does not lead in the totality of the place that you have here. And so around this city, you all have a lot of land. And there's a lot of landowners. And there's a lot of opportunity to fill it in a different way than the normal context. And so that's what we want to get through with you all. When we started studying this, you can see the patterns of how they build, and you start to see the old patterns of development versus your new patterns of development. Strip centers lining Highway 90, and you've got continuous curb cuts, and it creates a certain environment. Those are happening by your rules. Everything you see going vertical in your town meets the minimum standards of your development ordinances, or they go through a district and they create the standards for that individual district. What we're challenging you all to do through this process is not only rewrite the rules for your downtown, but write the rules of how new development around your town fits and functions with your community. If it's a series of subdivisions and rooftops with no services, they will be driving into your town. It's very important that that balance gets struck. Your town functions like a complete community. There's parks, churches, schools, little small house form commercial buildings, small house form office buildings sprinkled in and around your areas. Until you get back a little bit further, then it starts to become strictly residential in nature. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second here. I'm a geographer by trade, and we can't do this without studying the geography. And so when we first got started, this is the first thing we did is we started looking at your topography maps and you're analyzing the hydrology. And through this process, we're going to do full hydrologic studies of the watersheds and see where your watersheds, where your subbasins go, because growth and development outside can cause serious small area flooding into the town. And that needs to be done and make sure that the standards that the new growth that's happening builds to maintains upstream flows and has a slower release rate so it doesn't overwhelm your system. It's really important. So we'll be looking at those elements through this process as well. The time is now that you all need to make these decisions. And as the mayor stated, you guys have done a ton of plans. You've been planning for decades, but the implementation of the plans don't get accomplished. We are not here to do that. We do not do plans that get shelved. We do plans that come to life. We put the policy alignment into the plans. We put the budgetary aspects into the plans. Your previous plans have a laundry list of 900 things you need to do. It's so overwhelming that no one knows where to start. It's a laundry list of these items, and y'all have been kicking the can down the road for decades. And the time has come where you don't have the ability to do that anymore. You've got mad growth knocking at your doorstep, and you're going to have infrastructure demands, water, wastewater, electric utility. This means staff. This means resources. This means finding land. There are a lot of elements. The school district, for example, we're hearing that the school district is already overwhelmed with this growth. The tax base needs to support this as well. What does this look like? How does it function? Those are the types of things we need to be focused on. When we do your new plan, we are not coming up with 98 things you need to do. You have 5 things. You probably have the physical and literal resources to actually accomplish. And so we need to find out what is most important. Is it solving drainage? Is it making sure you have adequate infrastructure? Is it making sure that you have the tax base and the sales tax downtown to maintain your current tax rate? You know, and what happens if you lose some of your sales tax dollars? What does that do to your pocketbook on a daily basis when your taxes start fluctuating because of externalities in your community, right? If these new developments grow and the day that they get put on the ground, the house value doesn't pay for the police, parks, library, fire, water, wastewater, electric systems, and they're upside down their investment, that means all of y'all's taxes go up because you will be subsidizing that development if they don't generate enough wealth to pay for themselves. That does not sound good, right? This is a serious thing. We're not here to talk abstract concepts. We're talking about growing a community. We take this really serious. We take our job serious, and the time is now to get started. In order to understand how to even begin moving forward in a town like this, particularly these fast-growing towns, we did the DNA analysis. We're going to go through this step by step. The DNA is the building block of life on Earth. It is the foundation of what we do. We love that term, and we think that the physical and numerical patterns that make up your spaces that you all love so much is the ingredients. Those numbers are what you love, and they are what make you feel comfortable in the place. They are what makes you feel uncomfortable in a place. And so the DNA is found in the physical construction of 173 years worth of patterns here. And it's formed by the streets, the buildings, the sidewalks, the nature, the things I've already listed. But when you assemble them together, those core components make these very special places. These negative spaces become courtyards and gathering places. It's where you go out and hang out. It's where you go listen to music. It's where you go and have a glass of wine or a cocktail. It's those spaces, and y'all have them in a really beautiful way. So the first thing we did is study the city. Then we started to establish these character areas where we started to see some character that was similar in nature. We analyzed your blocks and your sites, and then we created a block and site scale data. It's in the DNA report. And then we dissect the building forms. You know, what are the physical patterns of your buildings that you've got, and then how does that create the space? And then so we have specific site sheets where we studied individual lots and we extracted all the characteristics from them. What we started noticing immediately is you don't build in a normal manner at all. There are buildings sprinkled like a shotgun all over the place. And what we assume is happening is that maybe there was a 200-year-old pecan tree that was, you know, where you would put the house, and you scooted the house over. Maybe you wanted to, if you look at these building patterns, you'll notice there's buildings all over the place. They're not lined up. They don't fit within their lots. There's some in the middle of the street, and y'all built in crazy patterns, and it's okay. But the ordinances you have on the books right now would never allow this to be replicated. Your ordinances are so conventional. These would be in a perfect line with a 25-foot setback, 5-foot side yards, 35-foot rear yard, and you would have that block after block after block, because that's what your code is telling you on new development, or if something unfortunately what happened here is how you would have to build your house back. Who here has had an issue with the codes trying to rebuild or build something new or add a deck or a fence, or has there been any bad experiences with the existing codes on infill?
Yes.
Few of them. All right. Well, it's because your codes don't match your patterns. And we think that this is what's so special about your patterns. So when we start thinking about your new rules, what if, and how might you actually use these patterns to inform your rules going forward? What if you allowed the building to be not +3 in the street, but right at 0 lot line, like this little building here, you know? And what if you allow the next house over to go back 150 feet? You know, that's the kind of space, this push and pull you have. I don't know that those are the right standards, but through this journey, we will introduce standards to you all. We want you to mark them up. We like this, we don't like this. This works, this doesn't work. And we will have images to map to these standards. The other thing we'll do with this throughout this journey is we're going to get real tracts of land. As you all come up with rules, we are going to have professional illustrators draw site plans and plans exactly what the standards would create. So you can say, see what you like, what you don't like, what we got right, what we got wrong, and what did we miss throughout this process. But you can see how there's park spaces sprinkled through. You can see where schools are located. This tells a story in itself, and it's really a wonderful story. But it's this fabric that we need to extract. We've got to celebrate this small block grid. It is so interconnected. And then you all feed into 90. I mean, I hope whoever did this to y'all's town is in a really bad place. I mean, a horrible place. It was criminal. It was criminal what they did with Highway 90. They intentionally broke the grid in the worst context they possibly could have. It could have gone down any of these streets and just widened the street out, but instead it disrupted the entirety of the street. We're going to work really hard to come up with solutions on how to tame this, how to best integrate it, whether it's through paint and markings, reducing lanes. We've got to work with TxDOT. We don't have a lot of jurisdictional authority over this, so it's going to be a series of partnerships, and it's going to be a series of, you know, mother may I's, and but it's real and it's really necessary, and so we think it's a worthy conversation. And it physically forms a physical separation from the two portions of the community, unfortunately. Who lives on this side of 90 down here? A few of y'all. How do you all feel when you're crossing 90 into town?
We only go up the lights.
They only go up the lights, otherwise we're gonna get run over.
Aren't you glad you have a grid? Have a series of lights you can go to? Because if you didn't, I'll tell you what, when the new developments go in and they have what are called arterial roadways and collector roadways, and they build out in that context, traffic jams happen so bad. I live in San Marcos, Texas. There is a neighborhood where they have to have a sheriff every day let these people out of their neighborhood. The neighborhood, when I leave in the morning, I can see the headlights over the hill. These people are queued up 200 cars deep trying to exit their neighborhood. Y'all don't have that and you don't want it, I promise. And if you want to go see it, it's in Utah, Texas, off of I-35. It's horrific. And the people that live there probably can't wait to sell their houses, but they can't because there's only one way in, one way out on 900 lot subdivision. And it's bad. When thankfully we've had a few council workshops with your council members. We've met with your TxDOT representative. We met with your transportation groups, and they know the grid is important, and they too want that in new development. And you all have the ability to do that. And so with new development, you can write those standards into your rules. Who knows what this number means? It's the magic number of Castroville, 13887. When we started looking at Castroville, this number continuously popped up. Your lot dimensions are 1/3 of an acre. It's 1/3 of an acre. It's 13887. It's 13,887 square feet per lot. If you get 330-foot blocks and you break them up, that's your block yield, and that's what you see all over town up in these areas. And so that pattern continued all over. See those 13887s everywhere? All of these are. Back in here, they shrunk a little bit. Up along this area, they did not follow this pattern because they incrementally got broken up over time so that someone with a little bit of money could build a little bit of building, generate a little bit of wealth, put in a little bit of store with a little bit of house. And so down in the core, it started to break those patterns a little bit. When we go through this journey, we need your help to find out where those transitions happen. We've heard loud and clear that this is an important pattern in town. We are here to respect that pattern. We want you all to tell us. We can map it for you and show you where the natural transition happens now. And so we're working on that. We've got some numbers. We've started studying your existing zoning, and we found what's conforming, what's not conforming. And so we'll be bringing that to our next meeting so you all can study it. when you look down in the core area, down on Paris Street and down into you know, the area where we are now, and then where your little commercial centers are, the blocks are a lot smaller, or there's going to be multiple buildings per block. So that's another question you can write the rules on. Maybe there's certain areas where you allow multiple buildings on those lots versus breaking the blocks. We'll have those dialogues. We're not doing that tonight, but we just wanted to make you all aware. We're very aware of the pattern. We understand it, and we'll need that going forward. But there's consistency throughout the town with your block patterns. And what we say is, once you get the public realm right, that's the city's wheelhouse. Maintaining the streets, maintaining the water. You want to be able to turn the lights on, flush the toilet, and turn on the water and get clean water. Those are the core services of the city. We need to get the city in their wheelhouse and off of the private side. The private market can ebb and flow as market demands change. These buildings have been here for centuries now, almost 2 centuries, and the youth inside of it can come and go. Yet the foundation of the way that the place is designed and built has been there for, you know, forever, and it can be a house, or it can change over time as trends change. This is what your zoning map looks like right now. We started doing this analysis. You can kind of see this little core transition area right here where this happens. And so what we did is we started to look at 3 neighborhoods. This is a 5-minute walk time from that circle, from the center of the radius. Oops, from here to there is 5 minutes. From the entire circle, that's a 10-minute walk. So we just got 3 different areas, and your town lends itself to that. And so basically, if you live in these areas, you have access to services here. In this area, there's services all throughout, and there's residential surrounding around, with the core going through here, and same thing here going into this area there. So what we found is there's a mixture of zoning types, some in more areas than others. But as we go forward, we want to understand, where are these zoning places, where would you like more services? Where would you like more parks? Where would nature get better threaded through? How do you integrate courtyards to create better places and connectivity? We are working on a map right now where we are going to draw every building, every lot, and then we'll go and analyze the negative space in between. And we're going to bring that to you all to let you all go crazy on it. And then you can help tell us where things go. But when we started seeing these, really large green spaces that kind of thread into the neighborhood. And some of them are private properties, right? These are private lots. We're not saying that this is public spaces, but what we're saying is the way that the courtyards function here is very unique. It's not like any other cities. And we think it's an opportunity. Today we ate at Rockin' Tapas. And Rockin' Tapas is framed by a house that has got a 0 lot line. It's a little Castroville cafe. And then Rockin' Tapas is set back 110 feet from the road, where the house next door is about 20 feet. And that push and pull creates this wonderful courtyard that's that little brick patio, right? And so there's spaces and places like that you all can designate or recoup through these efforts. And so when we started analyzing this, we believe that humans are like animals, and they like to live in different environments, and they thrive in different environments. And so what do these different environments look, feel, and function like in Castroville? So it starts off with nature. Nature is where you go in to nature, you go on hikes, you go swim in the river, you go start a fire and stare in the fire and sharpen your physiological claws, and you reconnect back with nature. You don't live in nature. You get in, you get out, and you leave, right? Rural environments are sparsely settled lands. It's where you first start to see some human habitats form, where they're permanent structures. Could be barns, it could be food production, it could be ranchettes, whatever it is. People want to live in a rural environment. That should be okay. Then you have neighborhood residential. This is where you start to see more formality in the streets. And even the infrastructure gets higher intensities. So in a rural environment, your trees are meandering, they're placed in random patterns. You have open swell, bar ditches where kids go catch crawfish in the creeks. It's a rural environment. And so the infrastructure out front too is rural, which right now you don't allow this either. You make your rural developments do urban infrastructure, and it gets them upside down on their investment, right? It doesn't pencil. if you will. It don't work out. So we are recommending that you start to code your infrastructure like your environments. Have places where rural infrastructure could be allowed and maybe appropriate. You know, where does it go? How does it fit? When you get into neighborhoods, though, you start to see some sidewalks. And you'll notice on this side we didn't draw sidewalks because rural neighborhoods exist too. So, but you'll see the formality of the structures. You may start to see tree patterns become more apparent, where the spacing of the trees is more regular. Sidewalks are more regular. You may see like garages, garage apartments. And then you have this core area, and there's an area in between this, and we intentionally did not label it. And when you go to the back room, there's posters and activities you can go through, and you'll notice that it goes from 3 to 5. And that was intentional because we don't know what 4 looks like here. And we didn't want to be presumptuous and say this is how your place type 4 functions. But place type 4 is usually neighborhood mix. It's where you start to have house form commercial mixed with residential. And maybe they're 1 or 2 lots apart. Where does that go? How does it function? Right now, you have these patterns, but do you want more of it? Do you want less of it? Those kind of things. That's the next round. We will have those conversations. But I mean, we do want you to put some notes on the boards in the back. So we have a lot of questions we're asking, but think through that, because that's going to be, we call it the fringe. And in the fringe, you're either partying in the fringe and having a good time. The fringe is like that messy zone where you're right on the limits. The old saying in Lubbock is like, keep it between the ditches. I don't know if you ever heard that, like keep it straight and narrow. The fringe is these areas where that starts to change. And whatever that context is really special. We need y'all's help to refine it. Then you have the core development. It's your downtown areas, the buildings around the Houston Square. It's the buildings that are 2 or 3 stories. Sometimes there's residential over retail. Sometimes it's entirely retail. Sometimes it could be residential. That context here is special too. What is the appropriate height within that area? Is it 2 stories? Is it 1 story? Is it 1 or 2 stories? You want 3 stories? Those kinds of questions are really important, particularly when you start getting development pressure and they understand the importance and the special characteristic that you have in your downtown. It's going to be really important to get those standards correct. The other thing that typically happens that we're noticing is your buildings are brought right up to the frontage. You've got on-street parking out front, but the building is just slammed against the street in those areas. They're very formal. The other thing we typically see in Texas towns that on small block grids is most of them have front porches, and y'all don't all have that. And it's really unique. And so when we're going through this exercise, you can code in different elements, but front porches are not as prevalent as we typically see here. I think it's interesting. So, and y'all function well without them. So, as we start writing development standards, we'll have that conversation. And then you have highway commercial. It's your core, the corridor that cuts through here, the Highway 90 corridor, and all the way out to y'all call it Fast Chicken Road. Is that what you Fast Chicken Road. It looks like this. The parking lots are way out front, waiting for like this 500-year parking event to take place. The buildings are pushed 500 feet back from the road. The signs have to be extremely tall because they're communicating from a far distance that cars going 70 miles an hour. So the context of place is totally different than your downtown. It's not saying it's appropriate. It just means we need to write the rules that how it fits and functions within your community. Those are the places that we identified. Are there any questions at this point about those? Does that make sense? Everyone? Very cool. We'll have more conversation back there as well. These posters are in the back there, and so you can actually go back and see them. Here's photos. I didn't realize I had all this. But here's some examples of what they look like, on the ground, of what your environment looks like. There's the poster you'll see, and then here's some examples of those places I was talking about. It's unfortunately a little dark, but see how this is 0 lot, and you've got the other thing that's cool is the building encroaches in the right-of-way on the 2nd story. A lot of communities require license agreements for this stuff, and like we're saying, no, let this happen naturally. This could be a wonderful pattern. You've already got it, and so when we start writing the rules, we'll make sure to focus on that as well. And then here's your commercial places along Highway 90, and they vary from like small little buildings like this to buildings oriented in an interesting way on the lot just because of the lot standards. So, and that's what it looks like. There's posters back there that we'll go through. This is y'all's current mission and vision. Castroville is a safe, friendly, and historically unique community where strong traditions and identity thrive. Y'all like that? Does that represent y'all? Yeah, that's cool. I mean, if so, we want to use it and carry it forward. And as we start writing the downtown plan and the long-range plan, we want to use these elements as a foundation. And the mission is to preserve Castroville's rich culture, historical architecture, local resources, and natural environment through carefully guided growth so friends and family of all stages of life can enjoy our community, steeped in a pioneering spirit and camaraderie. You know, I think that's solid. Y'all like that? All right, cool. We're gonna keep it and go along with it. All right. We did a SWOT analysis just to kind of analyze the city of like, what are y'all's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I'm not going to dive into that because I'm running long already, but these elements are going to be important to helping shape the conversation going forward. Y'all have a lot of strengths. Your rural lands, the way that you utilize your space downtown, the wide variety of building types that you have, the lot dimensions, the Medina River, right? But there's a lot of opportunities within these places too. So what can we use to like highlight those? How do you better integrate the Medina River? Whatever, I don't know what your goals are, but as we go through this, we need y'all's feedback of what y'all do want to accomplish through this, and what the critical things. Some of the weaknesses are infrastructure in downtown, the roadway design, the highway developments. You know, there's not much shade on the streets. And then some of the pedestrian infrastructure is lacking, but you know, it still works because you have a tight grid. So anyways, okay, we'll keep going through this. Form and function. We see these roofs often, and this was one that you'll have with a front porch. It goes over the, you know, provides a place for people to sit, have an interaction with the street. And we see this roof line everywhere, and it's called a shed roof. This is particularly called a cat shed roof. And but you'll notice these patterns all throughout Castroville. And there it is again. And this functions well, but your new developments are trying to grab some of those elements, and they're not using it for what it's functioning for. The form, so they put that on the little rooftop up here, right? Well, what we know what this was to shade people so they can sit on the front porch and not be interrupted from the street edge. It provides us this space between the public space and the private space. It's not supposed to be 35 feet in the air, you know, trying to screen. Then they took some characteristics from your architecture here and threaded it in, but the authenticity is missing, and that's not what it's about. We're not trying to replicate false architectural patterns and just put them on random buildings. Y'all didn't do that. That was not the intent with the way that you built. The other thing that you all have is you have an interconnected community. I mean, other than 90. But even with 90, y'all still have a really well-connected community. The superintendent says that it's important that the school location is somewhere centralized where more families can walk their kids to school. This is from your superintendent. Really critical statements. The director of TxDOT said resiliency within the roadway infrastructure and the ability to walk and drive from parallel amounts and redundancy is important. And your fire chief said the interconnectivity between neighborhoods for us is paramount. We've got to have that. So your new developments, we would hope to have this. It's really critical. We did a case study. I'm not going to dwell on this, but in Castroville, this is a 15-minute drive to Redbird Ranch. Same size, acreage-wise, and the scale is dramatically different. You can tell by the street design, the street widths. This is that collector road I was telling you about. See how all these points connect one point and they feed into this, and then they still can't get out of their neighborhood yet. Where did they get out of here? Okay, here, there's one. There's all of these people connect. Whereas you disperse within the grid. If there's one car at a stop sign, you can turn right, turn left, go over a block, and that helps create this this throughput. So if you wanted to get to your friend's house there, it is a short distance. I'm sorry, y'all can't probably see that in the back. And this was like a, there it is. From up here, this is a 12-minute walk from here to here, and you can go any different direction. You can go that way, you can go this way. The grid goes over and over. Here, the same distance separation from here to their friend is right there. These two spaces, that is a 35-minute walk because they've got to go out, 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 all over here, down there. This is real patterns that change your day-to-day activities. If you do that every day on a daily basis, the amount of time that you spend is exponential. It's like 10x. Your current standards require this: 25-foot setbacks. You have a garage out front, 5-foot side yards, 5 foot on each side, it's 10 foot, 35-foot rear yards. You've got screening requirements with your fences, and that's what it would look like. Here's what it looks like from the aerial view. And this is what it can create. This is what this is what you're telling the developers you want them to create by your current regulations. And we think that y'all deserve better. And you think you can get better by asking for better. Right now you're asking for a D-. And what happens if you ask for a B+? What would you get? What would that feel like? How would that function? And y'all have the ability to have say over this. The tract home builders don't like us. We don't like this. We don't believe this creates community. We don't think it's fiscally responsible. It creates economic debt. It creates placeless places. And the outcomes of this pattern are extremely difficult to retrofit. Your environment is so easy to retrofit because of the infrastructure and the patterns that you have. This does not get do-overs. You don't get a do-over on this. This is permanent scars. This is extremely expensive and costly in your infrastructure. It costs a lot to maintain. You've got dead-end water lines and wastewater lines looping it down these cul-de-sacs. Everything is disconnected. They've created a drainage channel in their backyards that's walled off. This is in Hutto, Texas. I was the director of development services in Hutto at the time that this got platted, and my name is on this plat. I signed that this was okay. And I hate it. I lose sleep over this. This is real, and people have to experience this on a daily basis. I invite you to go scope that out. It's miserable, and it shouldn't be tolerated, and you don't have to. This is what it feels like from the ground. See, you can see the curvature of the earth just from the residential street. See that? I mean, really, it's so wide. And so then they were like, oh, we need to put speed bumps in. No, this was a design flaw from the get-go. When you design roads this wide and this fast, which is what your road specs for your new subdivisions call for. When you get new subdivisions, they will be this wide. That's a 32-foot section, and you've got a 62 feet of right-of-way, or probably 60. This is what you get. And this is what it looks like for the apartment buildings. And the reason they put the apartment buildings like that wasn't because they thought it would be pretty. It's because that was the way that the lot was laid out, and they could get the highest yield. So you get sideways apartment buildings, fronting your street, and your signage will increase. Your roadways become polluted with cars and traffic, and you got U-Haul yelling at you that's down there. This is the screening requirements that y'all have for separating your commercial from your residential stuff, and so it'll feel like that. This is not Castroville. This is your retail standards. You got your pushing the building back really far, big parking lots out front. Eventually, it turns into that because it wasn't livable enough to go to. And then you've got these house designs, right? There's 2 different house designs. That's Castroville. This is what you're asking for. 2 contexts. I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or different, but it can be done in a better manner, and it can be built in a different context. This one has a front facing porch. It's got inviting architecture. It's quaint. People take priority. Here, you've got no usable porch. The garage protrudes out 25 feet from the front of the house because that's the width of a car and plus some. It's insular architecture. It's looking inward, and the garage takes priority over the street edge. All right. So here's the conclusions. Next step. Castroville has a say in its community, and in the state of Texas, you do have the ability to regulate design. You have the ability under the State Enabling Act of 1926 to regulate your transportation plan, and you have the Enabling Act of zoning that allows you to establish your land use regulations going forward. You can write as much or as little regulations as you want on land use or zoning, and so what does it look like? How does it function? Those are the questions we'll be answering throughout this journey. This is going to take about 18 months to go through this whole exercise. We're going to have 3- and 4-day workshops where we come in, we post up here for a week. You can come and go. We're going to be drawing. We're going to be meeting with the school district, with the TxDOT, with your city leaders. But we need y'all's voice to help tell this community's council, your leaders, what you want. And that's why we're doing this. So right now we're in phase one, wrapping phase one up. We did the DNA analysis. Tonight's the DNA intro. We've got a the project advisory committee workshop coming up, and we've had one already. Then you've got a lot of project advisory committee members in here. Some of the advisory committee members stand up. This is your crew on the ground that y'all need to tap. Okay, so we've got 3 right here, right? And then Priscilla and Kyle and Brianna and Scott, Darren, and we're adding one more member, I believe. Phil is here. I didn't see you, Phil, right in front. And Phil. So they're going to be helping us guide these decisions as we go through workshops and we get through some sticking points. This is not all happy-go-lucky stuff. However, we do say that this is a celebratory option. The fact that y'all are here participating, the fact that you're affording yourselves the time and the effort and energies to go through this is really critical. And the outcomes of this are going to be policies. They're going to be on the books. They're going to be tied to your budget. They're going to be fiscally constrained. They're going to be linking into the real application of your infrastructure and your growth patterns going forward. This will not be a laundry list of items that get put on a shelf. This is not what we're here to do. We will be so disappointed if you all don't get through this and get this thing on the books. The next phase is Castroville dreaming. That is where we want you to come in and dream. And we want you to dream big. And we want you tossing big ideas out. And overwhelm us with big ideas. And we're going to be tossing big ideas out to you. We're going to be doing it through visual boards. We're going to be doing it through drawing. We're going to do it through a site analysis. We're going to do it through development standards. We're going to go on walking tours. We're going on bike tours, golf cart tours. I'm going to toss one out right now. What if y'all had a golf cart community? Would y'all like that or not like that? No. Who says yes? One. No golf carts. I saw one today cruising around. I was like, hey, they're out here, but you wouldn't like to race it. Okay, yes, sir. What's that? Go ahead, sir. Yeah, this part is. I'm just curious to see how it went.
I think a lot of people is there. I feel like it's important to delineate between development and greenfield spaces and then development. This part right here. This part right here is pretty good.
Yeah.
We're all good here. So
you're right.
How do you address that?
So basically, we think there are some areas that the transitions need to be defined. Where we're good is subjective. Your rules right now on the books don't lead to that pattern that you've got on the ground. So what we would like to do is say, well, what if we wrote rules around those patterns exactly like they are? We make it to where you don't have any non-conformities, and we code everything in, and now all of those buildings are legal. Right now, you've got a bunch of illegal buildings based off of your current standards, based off of your development patterns down here. We do need to study that area and find out where those transitions are. What if someone wants to have a little house form commercial and it's one house next to a already a bar or the barbecue place or whatever, and so where does that transition start and stop? That's what we'd like to solve through that for those areas, and find out what's set in amber and where are the fluctuating parts, like where can they fluctuate? Where can the lots get smaller? What happens along Highway 90? What does that core look like along Highway 90? What standards do you put in place along that? So while you say it's good, it's not what you're regulating. So that's where we want to come in and fix that and just mesh up your policy decisions to what you're saying that you like. So that's what we're trying to do there. I'm sorry? You can do it through zoning. You don't have to do it through zoning. So that's one of our things we're saying. We're recommending that you do it through places and established places. Zoning is saying, this is I'm going to use the most extreme example. Zoning will say if you got a user like a bank, then that has different standards than a credit union, that has different standards than a barber shop. These buildings were built to be timeless. Blockbuster. We as planners wrote all these rules around movie stores and Blockbusters and how many parking spaces they need and what's their dimensions and how far they had to be set back. The use is completely gone. Now you've got Blockbusters that are now churches or Taco Bells that are pawn shops, but it's always looking like a Taco Bell. What we're saying is you don't need to regulate off of that. It's possible to change the paradigm of zoning and code in what you have based off of the character. And then coding character isn't coding an end user. So the end user is not gonna have to, change the fabric of what it is to fit into your zoning standards. So we're gonna go on that journey. We wanna, feed that through. But we just want to validate we're on the right path and the right trajectory. Well, I'll get to you 1 second, sir. The next thing we're going to do is we start drafting your long-range plan. These are the big ticket items, your next 5-10 year ticket items that we need to really focus on. Y'all may come back and say, we just need to fix potholes. And that's that's one of the items. We need a wastewater treatment plant. That's a big ticket item. That's a $20 million project. We need whatever. Those are the types of things we're going to be doing with that. And then we come into the design rodeo. Coming out of the comprehensive master plan, the design rodeo is where we come in. We're going to start introducing standards. This is when the rubber hits the road, the meat, where we'll start having those sticking points where we really need to define those spaces. That's going to be at the design rodeo. We'll be communicating throughout all of this. Everything will be online as well, and we're going to try and over communicate. Share this with your friends and neighbors as well. So after that, we'll leave. We'll start doing post-production and drafting codes. And again, we'll be bouncing these ideas and all of these elements off of the pack. Then we go into the code rodeo. The code rodeo is where we're going to be coming where we have new maps, new rules, new standards, and introduce them to you. See what we got right, what we got wrong, what we missed, and y'all will get to slash it up. Then we go back to the drawing board. We'll edit those again. We come back for a final round, which is the community roundup. This is when we've got everything polished. We're going to have it out, and hopefully, you're finding maybe a typo or something, but everything should be pretty gelled by that time. And it's a validation process. It's going to be another validation hey, are we all good? We got this right. Everyone, you're right. And that's going to be the goal. Then we'll start the public hearings and the adoption process. You can't fall off at that point. We need you there at those meetings as well and say, I was part of this. The only way that this happens is if you hold your elected leaders accountable and you all show up and they too understand how they got here. Y'all have great council members that are engaged in this and they're interested in solving these problems. And so we've got to take the time and do this. So that is the process that we'll be going through. That was a long presentation. Thank you for your patience during that. I think it was extremely important to go through and try and validate all those elements. Because we were worried about the turnout, we set up another room back there where we can go have one-on-one time. We've got some questions we want to ask y'all. We've got boards posted up there. There's some maps back there y'all can draw on, and so we can continue the conversation. Yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and close this portion out.
Question.
Oh yeah, you have a question? Yes, sir.
This would be if I get on this group, it'd be the 4th time I've been on one of these projects. And again, it went into oblivion.
Yes, sir. And so
And it costed us, the community, a lot of money to do this. At some point in time, we need to have something that actually is real, that people can actually move in or do things with.
Yes, sir. That is that process right there. We agree 100%. And the other thing I was going to say, I'm glad you brought this up, sir. Our team has been reading and studying all these old plans that y'all have done, and we have a Excel spreadsheet. We're gathering all the comments and the ideas that were threaded through there. We're going to send them to the PAC and the city staff and be like, what needs to go forward, what falls off, what ideas are can carry forward. And so we're going to reconcile all of those plans. We've been studying and reading all of those plans. You're right. Y'all have done a ton of planning with there has been some implementation. They've got some design guidelines. There has been some, but not a lot. This is going to write the rules. These are your new development standards. We are going to write your development process so that when the developers show up, it is very clear and easy. They know where to go, how to make this work. We're writing it. All of our work is done in graphics. We draw it, and then we say it, and then we say it again. So our ordinances do not look black and white. They are full of graphics. They're full of explanations. It's made to be where someone that doesn't work in the development field can pick it up and understand what they need to do to build a fence, to build a deck, how to actually build a house, and what the requirements. It's all broken into like a phase sequence. We're rewriting your entire development process and throughout this as well, sir. So I mean, this is a full implementation package. This is not a plan on the shelf.
We'll see.
The only way it won't happen is if y'all don't. I can say this honestly, we've never had a failure yet. And in Bandera, it was a 50-50 town. When we got to Bandera, they bet. They were taking bets that we were not gonna get this done. We got unanimous approval from their planning commission and their council. And it got done.
Amazing.
Thank you. I too, I was like, yes, it was fun, and it was because we engaged with the community. We're not here to tell you what you want to hear. We're gonna argue the back though, and we wanna have a dialogue. Yes, sir.
My name is Terry Beck. I was born and raised in this town. I was born in downtown Castroville, the hospital next to you. Square. I'm only gonna speak on the residential side. I'm not gonna touch the commercial or the retail. But in order, there's only one way you can protect the ambience and the beauty and the charm of downtown Castroville. There's one way and one way only. Nothing less than a single family dwelling can go on a single lot, 12,000 square foot or more. Period. No exception. You put that in your CZO and most of your problems are finished. I'm done.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's the pretty unanimous kind of thing here. Yeah, I hear that. It's,
Do you have your binding published anywhere, your DNA, your phase one?
yeah, man, it's on the it's on the website, and it's also on the link on the bottom of that card that you all were handed out. So if you go to this website, it's gonna be on here as well. All of this, we're actually gonna upload this video and the presentation on there. We're gonna try and over communicate this. One thing I will challenge y'all to do is get the young generation in this room. This is a really know this one here. What does your Castroville look like in your future? What's your ideal Castroville? Yeah. Charming. Yes, sir.
Where are your SWOT findings from?
We did an analysis just from looking at your infrastructure, studying the budget, looking at your topography, studying the patterns of the town. So
that's not from the public findings, that's from what you found somewhere else.
that was from our DNA analysis. Yeah.
So on the previous master plans, like the gentleman said there, I've been to a couple of SWOT findings. That was usually the citizens' findings and what they want to see for it.
Yes,
I
sir.
was wondering where those findings were from.
Yeah, we're pulling those as well, and so those are gonna thread back. We're gonna introduce those back to the community through this
I
effort.
feel from the last master plan to now, I have a feeling a lot has changed.
It has changed. That's
So
what we said.
those SWOT findings, previous master plan, I don't feel they align with the people who are now involved in seeing our community relive its charm or keep its charm.
Yes, sir. We believe
So
that that's important.
what I really am really curious about, if you're basing off of those findings or something else.
No, we've got those plans. We're gonna be reconciling those. There was a lot of public input that went into those, and if we didn't reconcile them, we feel like we'd be dismissing all of the people that have been in this journey before. We are studying all of those. We're grabbing the pictures. We're gonna bring those back forward for conversation. What applies, what needs to be left.
Again, for the current plan or no more?
I'm sorry, say it one more
Are you
time.
gonna ask that same form of question for the SWOT going forward or no?
Yes, sir. We're just reconciling those plans. That's gonna be part of the next conversation, the Castroville Dreamin'. We're gonna be like gathering those and then seeing what y'all wanna carry forward, what needs to get left off. Yeah, yes, sir.
Got a
Yes.
question for you, sir.
Oh, there you go, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, this gentleman had to say, but others had to say as well. You mentioned the word transition many times. Most everybody in here, again, I'm speaking for myself, but I think there's people that others that do that too. We are flying with the way things are. And rather than transition, what are we gonna work to preserve?
Yeah, preserving is,
Instead of bringing up all kind of new things, it's fine the way it is. Maybe we do need to improve some infrastructure, some streets, some potholes, some other things. But you also sit in there, love it, see the other places. We're none of those places, we don't want to be, never have been. And
never will be.
all I'm saying is, from what I hear, it sounds a lot like, we've been doing it all wrong for a long time. But we got a whole bunch of great ideas for y'all to try on. It's gonna go a whole lot better.
Sir, I hope you're in the same meeting I was in. What I'm saying is validating what you have, you love. And so we're talking about the transition areas right here, this area. Where these things happen right here, those are transition zones. They're not well defined. You don't have rules for them. And the way that they're taking place right now isn't allowed. So we're saying if you really want to protect and preserve what you got, you better write it in your rules. Otherwise, you either follow the rules or change the rules. But right now, if something happened along that, you could not rebuild back in the same context that you have. And to me, that's ruining the Castroville that you have and requiring the Buda, Lubbock, or pick a place rules that you got on the books right now. Yes, ma'am.
So, early in your presentation, you showed us the plan von Castroville, the original old plan, and then you showed us compared to an aerial photograph of today. Around it, so you can.
Okay, we're back. Yeah, I'll restate the question.
So I haven't asked the question.
No.
Next plan.
No.
Keep going. That one. Okay, so this one you were pointing out, look at the way the buildings are, they're all oriented, it's all wonderful, there's a grid, but there's so much blank around it. Aren't there already subdivisions that are platted in some of these blank areas? I mean, is there a way to infill what that's gonna look like?
Yes, ma'am.
So we can get an idea of like what the developments look like that are already using our terrible current code versus what if we did it like that? I mean, you can't, it all looks the same in that map. So I'd just like to know where we're already seeing.
Yes, ma'am. We will overlay those in. The question is, can we overlay the existing developments that have been approved on this map so that we can actually see in the real world how it's going to apply to Castroville? And we are doing that. We're going to get those plans. We'll import them into the geographic information system and put them in the maps. So we were building these base maps off of your existing.
How many raw acres within the city limits are undeveloped?
I don't have that, but we're working on that.
We
Yes,
don't
sir.
have that right now?
Well, I do. I don't have it. I don't have it memorized.
It would be very interesting to see because it's my understanding that any development outside our city limits within the ETJ, we have limited control over what happens in that ETJ. And it seems as though this is breaking down into two things. The core town or old town, as I call it, and then new development. We want to rewrite the rules, which, in my opinion, enforceability is a problem, not the current ordinances. And it's with anything. You rewrite it, if you don't enforce it, it doesn't mean, it's not worth the paper it's written on. But it's interesting that all of this analysis you've done, we don't have a footprint of the available development within the city limits right now.
Well, I do. I haven't. But that was not the part of this.
Not part of the beginning. That's very.
Yeah, I mean the infill lots and the assessment was done, and actually you do have authority in the state of Texas. Out in your ETJ, you have subdivision authority.
Yeah,
and
subdivision.
And if in the state of Texas, if they meet your minimum standards for a plat in the with the subdivision, you can't deny it. And so if they don't meet your standards, then you don't have to approve their plat. So administrating a subdivision ordinance is the letter of the law. You can't waiver from it by state law. Otherwise, you get sued. So you have a lot of authority in ETJ. Actually, you can come up with a transportation thoroughfare master plan that makes them hold into a small block grid. In your subdivision rules, we can write whatever standards for block dimensions that you all feel appropriate. Put that into the ETJ, and you will get the same exact development pattern that you have here if you so chose. So you have a ton of administrative authority over your ETJ. And the reason you have administrative authority over your ETJ, territorial jurisdiction, is so that you're not annexing junk later, so that when it's coming in your jurisdiction, you're not having to subsidize the development patterns that took place there. You also have sign authority in the ETJ. You have environmental regulations in the ETJ. The only regulation you don't have in the ETJ is zoning. And zoning doesn't really matter because we're not talking about what goes inside the building anymore. We've got to change our mindset. It's very easy to get trapped in this old way of doing business and thinking that you have no say. Y'all have all of the power. Or you can sit back and pretend to be powerless and get run over and become Buda or Kyle or Lubbock or pick a place. Or you can be Castroville and really be special. But it's all up to you. These are your rules. We're here to facilitate the process. And whatever y'all want it to say, we will make it so. We're also going to tell you the outcomes of it. We're going to do a fiscal analysis to make sure that it actually is viable. We're going to tell you if your tax rate is going to go up based off of your patterns. And so we're not here to do abstract stuff. We love and breathe and eat and sleep this stuff. And I also love to argue about it. So I can't wait to have jump into a debate about it. So hopefully that answered your question, sir. Yes, ma'am.
So the workshops that you have that are going to be coming up, 3 to 4 days. How long each day and what hours of each day are you proposing?
So there will be open studio time and closed studio time. So we'll have we'll present a schedule well in advance. It's going to be out in January or February before we get kicked off. We will send out as much information on the front end as possible, and then we will post those schedules. But they're all day. So we do opening ceremonies, closing presentations at the end of the night. Everyone will have an opportunity, and it's all digital as well.
So while I have all the time in the world, some a lot of people that don't, and they only have nighttime. So what are you envisioning?
So we do them all day and all night. Yeah, both. They'll be available all day and all night, and we leave them. We'll come there for a week, and so we'll post up in one place, and the boards will be there anytime you show up. Generally, we'll be there unless it's crazy hours, but it just depends on the schedule. But we also have it online virtually. You can participate virtually throughout the day as well. And so we will live stream the event. We'll do blips and blurbs of that as well. And so we're seeing people leave. Before everyone leaves, or if you want to bail out, go ahead. We want to just take the conversation to the back room if we can. Thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to go on this journey with y'all. And I hope y'all are excited as well. So thank you.